Oh my goodness. OMG. Wowzers. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a new Marist poll that's come out. Marist. Oh no. Marist says Harris is up by 5 in their latest general election poll. So that must be a death blow to Trump. By the way, you've got Marquette. Marquette's been terrible this cycle. They're coming out, they're starting to, you're seeing a lot of these liberal pollsters come out of the woodwork and start saying, all right, we admit it, Trump's going to win. Marquette is the latest one to do it. But no, Marist apparently says Harris is up by 5 in the popular vote. Remember, Biden won the popular vote by 4.2. So they think Harris is going to overperform it according to their polling data. Let's take a look at some of these crosstabs. Their crosstabs on the independents, they've got Trump plus 10. Wow. So what's the oversample? Oh, it's Dem plus 7. What a waste of money this was. This poll was a total and complete waste of money. They oversampled Democrats by 7, even with the recent stuff from Gallup basically admitting that it's at worst a 50-50, split in terms of party ID, with Trump likely winning independents by at least 5 or 6 because of how radical Harris is. They've got it at independents plus 10 for Trump, which would be crazy. That would be possibly a popular vote victory for Trump, you would expect, depending on how everything shakes out. It's not an exact science because some people, they say they're independent and then they vote one way, but still, their last poll had Trump plus 4. And would you look at this, they get an A+ rating. Man, I wish I could, when you're in 3rd grade and you get 2 out of 20 on a reading test, I wish they graded me like they grade this pollster because I'd get an A+. I'm serious, that's how they grade these pollsters. If they're 7 points off in terms of to the 2020 election, no one cares about midterms. Midterms are meaningless. Trump was not in midterms. Midterms and general elections are 2 different things. It's apples to oranges. Man, I mean, the way they grade these pollsters is just amazing. But this doesn't even make any sense. Even if you're a Kamala supporter, how is this a good poll for you? You're losing independents by 10 points. Yeah, you're up in the actual poll, the popular vote by 5 points because they oversampled Dems by 7. They had like 40% Democrat, 33% Republican, and then the rest was independent. But it's just, this is just ridiculous. It's a terrible poll. And this is going to muck up the average for Harris, but listen, you look at Polymarket, you look at everything, people understand, they can interpret these bad polls. This just gets put into the aggregate, but people know, they look at the crosstabs, they realize Trump's winning independents by 10. The actual poll of a Harris plus 4 or a Harris plus 5, apparently, that's not an actual reflection on what's going on within that poll, because that poll is oversampling Democrats by a ridiculous margin, probably by at least 6 more than it should. If you want to say maybe Dem plus 2 electorate, maybe Dem plus 1, I would probably go even at this point. I would say to go even based on everything we've seen. Republicans, Democrats, independents. Or go with more Republicans and Democrats and then a little bit less independents, but Republicans and Democrats are even when you sample polls. But either way, plus 7 Dem sample is just crazy. Donald Trump continues to soar in Polymarket. He's up 21 points now. At this point, it's almost fishy. No one has seen a lead like this in recent history. Yeah, we have. Biden was actually up by like 30 points in terms of the betting. But to be fair, I think there has to be a correction. I'm almost like just the polls, to me, I think this is probably where it should be right now based off of the polling error in 2020 and 2016. But the actual polls show that it's, you could argue 55-45, something around there. Not really 60-40. Biden had a much bigger lead in 2020 in the polls than Trump does in 2024. But you also have to factor in the polling error that, a lot of these pollsters are very biased and they overestimate liberals, and they've done it since 2016 in the general election. So there's a lot to take into account. But yes, we have seen a recent lead like this. Biden, at the exact same time, I looked it up in terms of the betting odds, was up by like 35 points. He had like a 67-68% chance to win according to betting. Right now, Trump's at 60. So Biden in the last cycle was performing better than Trump was here. But it is different because Biden's a Democrat. They tend to overestimate Democrats. Trump's a Republican. The fact that he's doing this well is pretty crazy. And again, this is why the betting can potentially be superior than just the overall polls. Because if you're just a random person and you see a poll and it says +5 Kamala, number one, you don't know the context that That's a general popular vote poll. Trump can lose the popular vote and still win the election. I'm not saying he could lose it by 5, and he's not going to lose it by 5, but there's also no context with that poll. They just input that poll into Real Clear Politics and say, Kamala plus 5. Well, what is the sample on it? How is Trump winning independents by 10 points, but losing a general popular vote by 5? It makes no sense. It's because they oversampled Dems by 7, but that doesn't show up on Real Clear Politics. So people just see that, and then they're like, wow, she must be way up. But they're being led astray when you look at the numbers and the betting backs it up. It's not like Polymarket that everyone's going to run and say, let's put money on Harris now that we see a, Marist plus 5 Kamala poll, because you'll look into that poll, you're betting your real money, and you'll realize it's a crap poll. Trump is up by 10 amongst independents, but he's losing the popular vote by 5 points because they oversampled Dems by 7, when even Gallup admits the party ID difference is possibly 1 or 2 at the absolute most. There's no way this late in the ball game you should be oversampling Dems by 7 unless it's just a crap poll that you wanted to get out and you didn't want to actually make it realistic, because it's inexcusable. I mean, you put that poll out in like July when Dems are flying high and they think, well, actually it would not be July. July was when Biden was tanking, but maybe back even in the spring, you could maybe argue, okay, Democrats, you go back to 2012, 2008, they had a huge advantage in terms of the party ID, but it's not like that anymore, and we've seen that, and that's why we're seeing voter registration shifts in legit every single state outside of 2, and all of the swing states are shifting heavily in terms of voter registration to the right, or at least most of them are. And so this, to me, it is a pretty high number, but it's not like this is something we've never seen before. This quite literally happened. I mean, in 2016, Hillary was even a bigger favorite. Both Hillary and Biden were bigger favorites than Trump is right now. Now, sure, this is Trump's high this cycle, but it's not like Trump's like, oh my God, he's at a 90% chance like Hillary was in 2016. That's not how you need to read this. This is still a relatively close race according to the betting. Even if it is 60-40, 40% chances, it's not nothing. It's not like a 10% chance or anything like that. And I do think it will self-correct at some point. Marquette's been terrible. Cook Political's been terrible, but now Marquette's starting to shift. It's just like NBC and CBS with their polls. This is going to affect things. Well, actually, I'm not even sure this will affect things, because you've got the Marist poll mucking up the average now. Yep, you do. So I'm not sure if this, but no, this is good numbers, because, like, again, their last poll, this is the third pollster I've seen do this. NBC had Harris up by like 6, now she's up by 2. CBS had Harris up by 4, now it's tied. Marquette had Harris up by 4, now it's tied. This is just general popular vote. These are great numbers. These are great numbers for Trump. You've got, what is this, Fairleigh Dickinson? Fairleigh Dickinson's been terrible. They were plus 7, now they're plus 3. So even they're coming down in terms of the overall stuff there. We've also got Kamala Harris saying that Trump will use the Department of Justice to go after his political opponents. They have got to stop saying this. Seriously, it's like they want to be made fun of. Oh my lady, they elevated 34 felony charges. We've never seen this before. Liberal Andrew Cuomo admitted the only reason Donald Trump had the charges elevated was because he was Donald Trump. That's a political prisoner. You're saying Trump's going to do something that you've already done, and there's proof with the 34 charges getting elevated from misdemeanors to felonies after the statute of limitations had expired. Like, it's just so like they must have just no talking points at this point. We've got this, and liberals are freaking out, man. That's another thing. You see some of these liberals, these people are going to lose. They're out there, they're lying about numbers. They're saying Republicans are mucking up the polls. What about that poll that I just covered? You think it's going to be a plus 7 Dem party identification? You think that's realistic? But they're gonna talk about that poll, be like, oh my God, she's up by 5. These people are not living in reality. Reality says every betting market, all of the poll, I mean, you don't even need to do an error. We don't have to say, well, if Trump just needs a 1-point error in every state and he got a 6-point error in 2020 and 2016. Trump doesn't even need any of that. There's no error that Trump is up by 1 point right now in terms of the polling just in Michigan. He's up by 1. I think he's up in Pennsylvania with the new Rasmussen. Oh, they're going to say Rasmussen is biased. Yeah, no. Rasmussen only overestimated Biden in 2020. They're so Republican biased. They overestimated Biden. Yeah, that makes sense. God, they're Republican biased. Oh, that's all right. But like, look at this. They're just lying about numbers in Pennsylvania. They're saying, oh, it's been evenly split, the voter registration. They're getting crushed in voter registration in every state. Well, I guess we're making up Pennsylvania numbers now. No, since Kamala has entered the race, Pennsylvania party registration has been plus 19 Republican. Republican 46%, Democrat 27%. They're getting crushed in voter registration in every state as well. Even since Kamala, that was the whole thing. Once she entered, it was going to energize people. It really hasn't. I mean, she got a fake bump in terms of her approval, but we're even seeing liberal polls like NBC come out and say, no, her approval sucks now as well. So everything is bad for Kamala at this point. And we're seeing more of these, and you're seeing like they're having to start manipulating some of these polls with these samples. I mean, how do you have a +7 Dem sample? You have a +7 Dem sample this close to the election. That's got to be just manipulation. That's not a real poll that we can take from. I mean, come on. It's absolutely total crap. And by the way, here is the update. Donald Trump is just skyrocketing right now. It's 60-40. It's basically 60-40. And I think there's probably going to be some correction, but maybe there shouldn't be. Maybe this is really what it should be, around 60-40 for Trump, or like 65-35. Because when you look at the polls and you compare them to 2016 and 2020, and even just looking at the polls right now, it looks like Trump's going to win. It looks like Trump's going to win basically every swing state, possibly outside of Nevada. Georgia and North Carolina, they're about to be out of reach for Harris. Arizona's already out of reach. The Rust Belt is looking pretty good for Trump.